Welcome back to the LeaderLink podcast. This is your host, Charles Heasley, and last week we talked about accountability, but that was more of an episode on a perspective shift, and we talked about how instead of who's to blame, it's forward thinking, and how can we improve outcomes. But let's be real. There's some times where we have to hold people accountable in a way that is, sometimes punishment is necessary. Sometimes there are consequences that are necessary. Again, I don't necessarily want to lead with that. Let's figure out, sometimes it's necessary, but sometimes it is also training may be needed or so forth. But let's talk about in a situation today where there's some sort of behavior that is not acceptable and that needs to be corrected, and it is your job as a leader to hold that person accountable. And let's just take a universal example, because it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Let's say somebody is late to work. Again, we could really dive in on specific examples depending on industry, but this is one that I think stretches across all. So somebody is late to work. Now, hopefully they know that the workday starts at whatever time. And this is a problem behavior because the organization is counting on them to be there at a certain time. The team is counting on them to be there at a certain time. And if they're not there at a certain time, then, and you do nothing to hold them accountable, then you're going to create a larger issues for yourself, because other people on your team are going to see that, okay, well, instead of 8 o'clock, whoever, this person shows up at 8:05 consistently, or 8:10, or sometimes even later. Well, the bar is now lowering because you're doing nothing about it. And again, we talked about last week that accountability really starts with looking at yourself first. And sometimes leaders struggle with this because they don't want to have that hard conversation. But if they don't have the hard conversation, then other people will see that the bar is dropping, and the whole morale will eventually start to decrease. We can do a whole episode on that in the future. All right, so we've got a person who's late. They're late, more often than once, and the problem is not going away, and now you have made the decision to hold them accountable to it. Well, the first thing is do a little bit of preparation. When you have an issue with accountability and you approach somebody and address it, remember we talked about last week that people have the ego, the self-preservation. This is what is going to likely happen. People are going to become defensive. They're going to come up with excuses. And so it is essential to prepare. Have your facts in order, and then prepare for what excuses or challenges they might come back at you with. And thinking about that will help you, because it'll help you come up with how you're going to respond to those things. If for example, if somebody were to say, well, is 5 minutes really a big deal? What are you going to say to that? For some businesses, 5 minutes may not be as big of a deal, but if a small standard like that is allowed to fall to the wayside, then what other standards are going to fall? Where does that end? So if your start time is 8 o'clock, it is perfectly reasonable for you to say, the start time is 8 o'clock. That's what we expect, and there's really nothing else to discuss. It's a time that we expect. So do your preparation. The first thing to think about is, and this can even be the flow of your conversation. The first thing to think about is describe the specific performance issues that you're seeing. In this case, the specific issue is being late to work. That's not that complicated. For other issues, we may want to look deeper and see, is it one issue? Is that issue caused by another thing? But most of these problems are relatively straightforward like this. Not all, but many problems are. The second one goes right along with it. You have to describe exactly what the expected standard is. And this takes courage, because this is where you might get a little bit of that pushback. The specific standard that we're looking for is being on time, ready to go at 8 a.m. And again, you got to be ready for some pushback, be ready for some excuses. And here, think about a variety of excuses that might be coming into play. They might say, well, I've got childcare issues, or it just didn't seem like a really enforced standard, or um, people will come up with all sorts of excuses and reasons for why they don't live up to standards. So preparing for that in advance will help you. Um, you can have a discussion with them about this, but I think this is really essential in your preparation. The third step is to look for causes of the behavior. What is the reason for this? And the first recommendation that I have is to go back and again look at yourself first. Have I given the clear expectations, the training, the resources, and all of that? And if those haven't been done, then we have to start there. But in this case, the 8 a.m. start time is not a secret. It was communicated to them, hopefully, when they started. So the cause of the issues are probably going to be on the employee. They might say something like, the childcare issues, a loose standard. They could say, well, you know how traffic is. I mean, we live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Traffic here is terrible. And, so people might use that excuse. I can't say that I've never used that excuse before. So what are the potential causes? And let's look at the potential solutions for these causes. Well, here, instead of providing the solution to the employee, because personal accountability is a very strong motivator, or it can be a very strong motivator. And when people take part in developing their own plan, their own solution, they are much more likely to carry out that solution and take part of it, take ownership of it. So here's your opportunity. The next step is, after you look for potential causes, now we're going to look for potential solutions. But let's put it back on the employee. And let's say, okay, if it is a childcare issue, how can you potentially mitigate that in the future? And I would also be prepared for an answer of, well, I just can't. To which you're going to have to determine what the line is. And if the line is 8 o'clock, and that's a hard start time, and they can't be there until 8:15, you're going to have to determine what the line is. But if it is 8 o'clock and you got to get started, then as the leader, as the boss, your job is to make sure that everyone is meeting those standards, because it is not an organization of one. It is an organization of many people who have to work together to accomplish the mission. So you can say, and this might sound harsh to some people, but if 8 o'clock is really important, then you could say, unfortunately, if you're not able to meet that expectation, then we may not be able to retain you. Clearly written and stated expectations, they give you not ammunition, that's not the right word for it, but they give you a leg to stand on. And if that person really can't do it, and it may not be the right job. I mean, and this is a different example because, in law enforcement and any kind of shift work, they pretty much expect you to be on time. And when I started my day at 6 in the morning as a sergeant, it wasn't just be on time. I had to be dressed in my uniform. I had to have been at my computer, looked at the calls from the night before, planned what I was going to talk about in briefing. And so I had to be at work 30 minutes early. It's 5:30 in the morning. It was not fun, um, but if my team was not there, ready to go in uniform at 6 o'clock, I had a problem, and I had more than one occasion where I had to address it. The expectation is you're in uniform, ready to go at 6. So for what I did, it was very relevant. Again, I'm not telling you where the line is. You have to come up with that yourself. Um, Another problem or another cause that we talked about was traffic. Okay, well, ask the employee how could you overcome that potential problem. Well, an obvious answer would be leave earlier, set your alarm a little earlier. Um, maybe evaluate what route you're going down, but let the employee come up with those answers. Um, if it is truly another potential reason we talked about was maybe relaxed standards, then this is your opportunity to reinforce and clarify the standard. And if there is validity to that claim, then you need to address it with everybody involved who is supposed to be there at that specific time. Okay, so now that we've asked the employee for a solution, the next step, the fifth step in this process, is to basically develop a contract with the employee. And it doesn't have to necessarily be written. Sometimes written down is effective, but in this step, you're looking for agreement. You're looking for a commitment from them. When they're expressing different potential solutions, as the leader, I would recommend asking something like, "Is that reasonable? Is it reasonable for us to expect blah blah blah? Is it reasonable for you to consistently accomplish this?" You're looking for acknowledgement. You're looking for them to say, "Yes, it is reasonable. I can meet that standard." Um, Depending on what the issue is, set a target date, and this is still in the um, you know the contract phase. Other words, agreeing on the specific actions that they're going to take. Set a target date. And so, as something like this, I know this is going to sound silly, but I have done it myself. So if the problem is being late, and we set a specific date for tomorrow, is that reasonable for you to be on time at 8 o'clock tomorrow? We need that. Yes. Eventually, you don't want to do this every day, but it is essential to get that agreement where both parties understand, here's the expectation, here's what I have to do to live up to that. And the final thing is review. Schedule time to review progress. If the person is on time, every day the next week, review that, and I would approach them, and I know it's their job, like they're supposed to do it. We're holding them accountable to it, but I would approach them and say, "Hey, I noticed you've really picked up your efforts to be on time. You were on time every day last week. I appreciate that. The team appreciates it. Just wanted to let you know, keep it up." I know some leaders are like, no, that's their job. Why would I celebrate their? It means something to people. So that's just a blueprint that I like to use. Again, the first step is we need to know what the specific performance issues are. We need to describe what the expected standard is. We need to look for the causes, and in this step, it's important to reflect: is the organization or the structure, are we somehow leading to the performance issue? If so, we need to evaluate it. Otherwise, we're going to be looking in that conversation with the employee to determine what those causes are. Fourth step is ask the employee for solutions. Help them be part of the problem solving process. The fifth one is to agree on a specific solution and develop that contract where they are committing to doing whatever it is by whatever date, even if it's the next day. And then the sixth step is to follow up. All right. So when we get to accountability and there's an employee, some issue that we do have to address, here's a very clear 6-step process that can help you overcome some of those challenges. All right. Hope this was helpful. We'll see you next week.